Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Pause It For Me podcast. I'm here with notorious dog aggressor Hannah. What happened with that? Was that yesterday?
Yeah, I was on a shoot and I was trying to get the dog to look at the camera and I went, and they're like, don't do that. You're going to rile the dog up. And I was like, ah.
But Hannah, we have a big episode in store for the audience today. This is our first episode where we have two guests, totaling 4 hosts. And you know what that means?
What does it mean, Andrew?
It means I had to invest in another microphone and call in some favors to borrow some extras. And speaking of Colin...
Oh, sorry, man. I could have brought mine.
No, sorry.
We have here Colin Ziraldo and Ben Bergeron. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, happy to be here. This is exciting.
Yeah,
for sure.
It'd be nice to chat with you further about filmmaking.
So, audience, you will hopefully know Ben Bergeron from the last time he was on, exactly 10 episodes ago now. And we had Ben and Colin on stage at the Coffee to Cocktails premiere to talk about Shadows of Deceit by Owen Carson by Ben Bergeron and Colin Ziraldo. And I think embarrassingly at the beginning of that, I said that just you had directed it, and I didn't say that you had directed, but I'm not sure.
That was definitely a case where, like, we didn't talk about that we were both directing it. It's just kind of what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we had made so many films together at that point that it was just like, there was some back and forth, and Colin pulled me through it in a lot of ways too. Like we wouldn't have made a film that month if Colin hadn't just kind of like almost grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and said, like, just fucking write something, man.
That's a good collaborator for you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's good to have a creative partner that like forces you to do stuff.
So
speaking from experience,
the 12 Tales film project is wrapped up? ? Almost there. Just
we actually have one more shoot day next week.
One more.
We're just shooting a little wraparound to kind of tie all the 12 shorts together. But we finished all the 12 shorts. So now we're just kind of finding what the unifying thread is before our big screening.
Perfect. Yeah. And I will come back to that. I have a couple questions written down. So I will turn the spotlight over to Colin because, Ben, you've been on the podcast before. And we'll jump right into it. Can you tell us a little bit about your filmmaking journey and what led you to this point in your career? However long you want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's something I have to think about. So I guess it started out that in high school, tried to do like the old indie filmmaking thing, trying it out. I think at that point I wasn't sure if I wanted to do film as like a career.
Yeah.
But, like it's Comtech class and you're messing around. But I really enjoyed the technical process of like, getting the camera and editing and all the audio post-production and stuff like that. So anyways, I ended up deciding on going to college for film. I took the digital cinematography program at Canada College. It's a 3-year
Which I almost took. So
which Andrew almost took.
Yeah, you guys are the
took,
same
too.
age. You could have been in the same program together.
Wow. Serendipity.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that, if there's any standout moments from that course, because the only reason why I didn't, my parents swayed me away from it because the course was so new at that time that no one had graduated from it yet.
So, okay, that's interesting. So I'd say the transition from high school into college. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think at one point I wanted to pursue STEM, but maybe that wasn't for me.
Very different.
Yeah, very different. I don't know. I'm a sci-fi nerd. I love science and all sorts of stuff. So anyways, pursuing college. I don't know. I feel like the biggest thing going into applying for colleges is like, where am I going to go?
Where are you going to go? Yeah, I remember where I was when I decided, I'm going to Niagara. And I'm glad I did because it's where I met you.
Yeah.
A big part about like going from high school into college is like, what program do I take, right? In Ontario, there's a lot of different cities with a lot of different programs. Originally, I thought maybe Toronto is where I want to go. I'm from London, Ontario originally. And it's like, oh, that's close.
Yeah, it's close. Yeah.
I don't know. My mom doesn't want me to go too far away. And
I can relate. Yeah.
I ended up choosing a college that was like 6 hours away from home.
Yep.
But ultimately, when it came down to it, it's like, who am I as a person? And I'm a hands-on learner. And I need to have gear in my hands. Like, I'm not that much of a writer, like, at heart. And I don't know, it's just, I need to be out there and kind of expend my energy in like a, physical fashion, shooting something, doing something. So I went on a tour, a bunch of different colleges. I checked out Humber, Seneca, like a bunch of different stuff. But Canador ended up going on the radar, and I went to their like open house, and I was really impressed because they had like equipment that like students of every year could have access to, and like really like modern equipment, which I was really excited about. Like they had like a Red Epic and a bunch of other stuff, really nice lenses. And that was really exciting as a young Colin. And so I'm like, oh man, if I go to the school, I'm gonna like actually be able to like play with gear, and it's gonna be really exciting. So I pulled the trigger and I ended up going to Canador. And it was like a really good decision for me personally, because it's everything that I hoped for. I had hands-on with the equipment, and I just had a really good like cohort of people that I went to school with. And also what was really nice is that everybody who was in my program was mostly a mature student. And that was really nice because like I just felt like the person I was, that's the group of people that I felt most comfortable with. And everybody there, either they like went to school before and then they're like, no, I want to pursue the arts. And I'm just like, yeah, I want to do that too. I want to like, you know, make this work as like a career. And it's like, let's go. Total life change.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I ended up doing that. And then later I decided to, after I graduated, to take the post-production program at Canador, because I learned that I really like editing and post-production. And also through the process of going to film school, I feel like the one thing that a lot of people do is they're like, I want to be a director.
Yeah. Yep.
And I wasn't that.
Me either.
I guess going into like film school, originally I'm like, maybe I'll do like the grip department, you know, light stands, you know, stuff like that, or even just like electric. But from there, I shot a lot of people's films, and that was like really good for me. And I really developed as like, oh, cinematographer. That's something I can get behind, maybe pursue as like a career. And so from that, I really kind of like buckled down, started shooting stuff, and I really grew a passion for it. Not really on the directing side, even though in outside of school, in between me going from the digital cinematography program to post-production, I directed a black and white noir medieval film, which is
cool.
Interesting for like a $500 budget or something.
And he
like
got
that.
it on Amazon Prime.
And it's on Amazon Prime, which is really
amazing.
funny. That
check
is just
that
a
out.
whole wild story, because it was like a friend of a friend knows someone who's a distributor, and then they're like they like the movie. It just kept getting like passed up, right?
That's amazing.
But my personal opinion, it's okay. You know, it's fine.
Yeah.
If anything, it's an advanced student film in my eyes.
Sure.
But like I put a lot of love and passion into it, and also
And there's a scene where a guy gets beheaded. So
and there's
cool.
a guy who gets beheaded, which was really fun because it's a watermelon that explodes with a wig on it.
That's cool.
But
I
like
that.
with the positioning of the
Oh
shots,
man,
and
it looks fantastic.
yeah, it looks really good. But yeah, so anyways, so like I pursued cinematography, but in the art of filmmaking, I really found that sound is really important. And so Canador College, just in their brand new post-production program, had $1 million Atmos like
Wow.
sound mixing theater.
That's amazing.
So it was like a movie theater in the school, which was really wild.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need to get my hands on this. Like, this just seems amazing. And like the instruction was like next level. I feel like that was another big part of like what I got so much out of it. It was just the instructors themselves, because they're people in the industry. Like the one guy's like running a post house in Toronto. He won an Emmy in the past.
That's
It's like,
cool.
he knows what he's doing. And also his specialty is like sound design for science fiction television series.
Ooh, that's sick.
Oh, I got so much out of that program. That was amazing. And so anyways, so it's like doing that, learning sound, you know, it's like, I feel like that really elevated me as a filmmaker, because what I found out is like the picture side's really important, but the sound component, that elevates everything up. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
think that's a blind spot for a lot of indie filmmakers is, you know, maybe they're really good at the visual components, but a lot of them, we talked about this off mic, that, you know, sound is a big part of the experience, but it's often lacking in lower budget films.
And then past college, I worked for a little bit in North Bay, kind of like shooting corporate kind of stuff, you know, and that was a good change, which was really good. Because I don't know, it's like I can make this look really good, even though it's like, I don't know, it's like interview footage, you know, whatever. Even though I feel like the angle that I went at was like everything's a mini documentary, so let's shoot it like a CBC short doc or something like that. And I feel like that really came out in my work. Maybe I spent too much time on projects than I should have, but you know what? I feel like I got a lot out of that because I feel like a lot of people find corporate work really dry, but I put a lot of passion into it, like in a visual kind of element. And I don't know, that really helped me. And then COVID happened, and that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And then I relocated to Ottawa because my brother lives here, and I have young nieces, and it's really nice spending time with them.
That's great.
And then I kind of restarted my whole career in a sense, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I have to get a whole new network. And then I found Ben.
Nice.
Or more specifically, a mutual friend connected us.
No, so my friend John, who I went to college with, also went to high school with Colin. And John and I were working on Chris Wiley's feature film, The Hijira Frequency, a couple years ago. Okay. And we needed an AC. And John kind of was like, hey, my friend Colin, who I asked to stay with while I was in town, who said no, he does camera stuff. Maybe he could help out. And so that's kind of how we ended up on set together.
Yeah, that was kind of a funny situation because my friend messaged me and he's like, hey, I'm staying in Ottawa. Do you have a couch I can crash on? And I didn't have at the time. And I'm just like, oh, no, I'm sorry. But since you're working on a feature film, do you know if there's like a position that I could fill? Because I think at the time I need a job, you know, and I need to connect to the Ottawa scene. But that was really good. So our mutual friend connected us. I was the AC. Ben was the AD. And so we worked closely together.
Yes.
You know, small sci-fi indie feature, you know, and it was good. There was challenges, but from that, we kind of, you know, had a really good relationship co-working. And then I ended up working with Ben at Hot Shoe. And then from there, Ben had a crazy idea of making 12 shorts in 12 months. And then told people, so we had to do it. But then from there, I don't know. I just feel like the both of us and our skills and just practice, it's that we made 12 shorts in 12 months and that almost killed us. But I feel like we just got so much better.
It's all worth it in the end, right? Like it was a lot of hard work, but you guys have this large body of work to show for, and you know you've learned a lot. So
yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like we've made more films in the last year than some people make ever.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear other people's stories of how they got to, you know, present day in filmmaking and seeing how it compares to ours. And
definitely some similarities.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting what you said about looking back at like some stuff that you worked on and thinking like it's just okay. I think that's totally key. If you're looking back at stuff you did like 10 years ago and being like, oh, what a time it was best I ever did, it's like you're probably not improving.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know?
100%.
It's like
I hate every single thing I've ever made.
I
like,
think that's
more
common.
But
I
the
feel
past
like
month, you
It's a
know.
part of the process, you know.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
Andrew
If you're
said.
gonna get better,
Yeah. Like even like looking back at like our January, February movies, I'm like,
Yeah.
But it's because we got so much better.
Yeah, even
Absolutely.
outside of filmmaking, like if you lie awake at night thinking like, oh, this embarrassing thing that I said 12 years ago, it's like you should be embarrassed about stuff in your past because it means you're growing. You're growing as a
You're
person.
evolving, you're changing.
you just
you're
also
getting
shouldn't
better.
dwell on it.
Yeah,
Well,
too.
yes.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear about Canador because, like I said, I opted not to go to Canador because it was a newer program. No one had graduated yet. There was less maybe stability. But I think that maybe backfired in a way because everything that you're describing about your program feels so modern and feels like there was a lot, you know, poured into it. Whereas our program felt old.
Yeah,
The buildings were
started
old.
in the 70s.
The equipment was old.
Yeah.
The professors were old.
Wow.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of great things about our program, but it was radio, television, and film, which is part of the reason I chose it because, you know, I knew I wanted to work in media, but I didn't know what to pick. So it was nice to have all three. But that meant there was less of a push and focus on filmmaking in general because, you know, there was also radio and TV to think about, you know, so.
Yeah, like Canador has like a really kind of really good television program. And that was also a part. It's like do I do TV? There was
Yeah.
even like a bridge program where it's like you finish digital cinematography and you can like pivot into TV, and it's like
It's
1
kinda
year
what we
less
did,
or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's really cool. I don't think that's necessarily the path that I'm going down, so I didn't
For
end
sure.
up going that way. But I feel like you have a really good point in saying how Canadore College's digital cinematography was just so new. And I feel like that's what I got out of it. Because when I was touring around Toronto and all the film schools there, it didn't really connect to me because everything was just so stuck in the past. And there's a lot of theory, a lot
Absolutely.
of writing. And I'm like, that's not really
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Mhm.
But then in a new program, it's there's a whole world out there of just like, what direction do we go? And they kind of decided, let's do crew training, let's do get hands-on equipment, let's get these
Mhm.
students making films, which
For
was the
sure.
biggest part, because we made, was it 3 films in the first year, and then two films plus a documentary in the second, and then the
Mhm.
third year, which is different than Ben's program because he went to Conflicts, even though we have
Yeah, so I always say that Canadore is basically like Conflicts 2.0 or Conflicts spin-off, because it's their program coordinator was a grad from my program.
Oh, interesting.
And like there's a lot of similarities, I think, in the curriculum.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of shared
Or sorry, no, their
stuff.
program coordinator was a prof from my program.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
yes, there's a lot of shared stuff.
Shared DNA.
So you
Shared
have,
DNA.
you have similar sort of filmmaking styles, maybe because you had similar teaching.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
feel like
so.
the vibes, like they're both like northern. I'm not going to say north because Ben would have issues
Oh,
with
well,
that.
Thunder Bay is
That's pretty northern.
yeah, much more northern than North Bay.
North Bay, gateway to the north is,
Yeah.
you know.
And then you drive for 12 more hours and you get to Thunder Bay.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, it was just like, it's just this new hip young program and they're just trying to figure it out, right? But that was really good because I feel like the students actually had like some direction in their education. It's just like, do you want to do this? Do you want to make a documentary? Do you want to make a music video?
That's pretty cool.
A lot of these were options. You didn't have to do all of them, but
Really?
I did all of them, and I
Oh, that's
almost killed
sick.
myself doing it. I
No,
did
that's
like
good.
a music video, which was insane. I don't know, just documentary stuff. I don't know. I just find it really funny because it's just like, so you do film and it's all narrative. It's all,
Mhm.
fictional. You do a documentary. It's very real, real people, real personalities. So I did a music video for somebody. It was an interesting experience. I worked really hard and I feel like I got a lot out of the project, but
Mhm.
maybe there was some, I don't know, issues in the relationship in between me and the artist, but we
Sure.
both wanted this project to come out. But I already had planned to make my documentary project about this band who I just made a music video about. And
That's
so it was
interesting.
just like, oh no, I have to continue working with this
Yeah.
person. We're good now, and I think they're a
Yeah.
very talented artist, and it was just a time in our lives. But it was a really good experience because it was me getting out into the real world, dealing with real situations. And
Absolutely.
also it's like, oh, I got to do this so I can graduate, kind of a thing.
For
right?
sure.
But it was a really good thing because I made mistakes. It was a tough situation, but I went through it. Me and the person I was dealing with were very much good now. It's a very talented artist. It was just a situation of the time, right? But it was just really important because I feel like letting a student go out there and then deal with the real world was very important to kind of my growth as a filmmaker, as a cinematographer, right? And I really feel like that kind of changed my course a little bit and opened my horizons of being like, okay, maybe I don't do narrative film all the time. Maybe I go into corporate video production because there's a lot of documentary kind of type activities, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And I feel like that really changed my direction in a way. And then I'm like, okay, if I'm going to be doing this as a job, this is something I'm probably going to have to deal with a lot. And so instead of me going into the workforce and then dealing with this for the first time, I did this
Yeah.
as a student. And I feel like that really kind of helped me. And that was really good.
Absolutely.
That's very valuable. Like, because with us, I wouldn't say in our program we were in like real world situations very
Not
much. So there was
so much.
a little bit too much time to screw around.
Yes, we had to do different styles. So we had to do music videos, documentaries. We had to do all those different styles, which is great because we had experience with all of it. But unless it was like a documentary or something, it was usually in a controlled set environment,
Yeah.
which means, maybe we had 8 hours to light a set. Whereas now, as you know, documentary camera people, we usually have like zero time to do anything.
Yeah.
Like an hour at most.
But like, you know, coming from that background of documentary, doing corporate, it's a very good skill to have as a cinematographer, because you go into situations with terrible lighting and just, you know, people that are not camera trained, and you have to adapt to that situation.
Yeah.
Like a puzzle piece, you know, figuring
Quickly.
that out to make it look good, sound good, you know.
Yeah, so like the documentary was covering an album release, so it was in a bar with stage lighting and all this other
that's
stuff,
bad,
and it's
yeah.
like how
Bad
do
lighting.
how do
Yeah.
I make that look good? And I
Yeah.
feel like I really kind of like was able to being like, okay, this is available light, if that makes sense.
Yes.
How to get the most out of this image. And I feel like I did a really good job, but it helped kind of change me. It's like it's not just working fast, but it's also getting a good result in the end, you know.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Now, we've been bouncing back and forth the last couple of months between, you know, filmmaker discussions and film discussions. So I do want to ask you, and I love this question because it says so much with so little. Can you tell me 3 films that describe your taste in movies, whether it's, you know, taste in films that you like to watch, taste in films that you like to make, however
that inspire you.
Yeah, that inspire you, however you want to tackle it.
That is a very good question, because there's just so many movies out there. And like, I feel like me as a person, I just am a general enjoyer of movies, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Sure.
Not super big into horror. It's not like my
Yeah.
kind of deal. Unless there's just like a really interesting concept,
Yes.
then
Yep.
I'll push through it.
Absolutely,
Same with us.
for sure.
Because there's a lot of sci-fi horror that exists, and I'm just like, oh, that's a good concept,
Like The
but I don't
Thing.
like the scary things.
Sure, yeah.
But when it comes down to it, I would like to say like top 3 films, maybe, even though technically 2 of these are like trilogies.
Sure.
Okay, so Back to the Future,
Absolutely.
really, really big one. Robert Zemeckis, love that
Absolutely.
director.
So good.
Lord of the Rings. I
Sure.
love Lord of the Rings. Fantasy, it's all really good. And then Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Love
Good
that
one.
movie. And I think it's like, I love sci-fi, I love fantasy. Both those movies are almost elevated by just how good the music is. And I feel like if you listen to the music just outside, like if someone played it, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's Lord of the Rings, or that's Back to the Future, right? It's just so synonymous with that film. But Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I love a film that's just such a simple concept, just thoroughly explored. Because in Planes, Trains, in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles,
It's okay. We have trouble with movie titles on this podcast. Mostly me, but
it's a story about a man going home for Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
That's it. No
Very
more, no
character
less.
driven.
Yeah, very
Mhm.
character driven. And then John Candy's character comes in, kind of messes things up, and it's this whole bizarre journey, but it feels really real. I love comedy, you know, and it's just a really solid film, very wholesome, very good. But I just love movies like that. I feel like a good example of the modern era that came out, even though this is a film that was made to look old, was The Holdovers, which just came out with Paul Giamatti.
still haven't seen that.
Yeah, we've heard great things about it. We're excited.
It is a very nice
Yeah.
film, but ultimately is a film with a very simple concept, and it's just very character driven, and it's just like, I like these characters. They're very nice. I feel very warm and fuzzy inside, and it's not more than it has to be. It's not trying to be more.
Mhm.
But from then, the real character experiences, it just kind of, I don't know, it makes you reflect inward a little bit,
Yeah,
just being like,
definitely.
how am I to these characters? And I like that a lot.
Mhm.
I'm all about the heart when it comes
For
to
sure.
movies and like tugging on the heartstrings. So would you say there's a difference between the kind of movies that you like to work on and the kind of movies that you like to watch? Or do these 3 choices kind of influence your style and the things that you gravitate towards?
That is very tough,
Mm.
because this is the thing. It's like, I don't have like specific genres that like I go into for what I like. I'm a general movie lover in general. I feel like anything that just strong audio, strong music, strong visuals, I'm just like very there. But also really trying to connect with the characters, because I feel like in some movies that, like indie movies,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of off-axis filmmaking. And what I mean by that is, imagine a wide shot, but it's not straight on. It's to the side. It's 2 characters.
That's true, yeah.
You're not really connected to these people. On-axis filmmaking, it's like, even if it's like wide or tight, it's like, it's very much as like I'm having a conversation with you, but like visually.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like that connects to me more, and that's what I try to do, and that's what I tried to do in the 12 Tales project that I did with Ben, And that was something we agreed on. We wanted to stay on axis for a lot of the cinematography that went on, because it was a lot of character-based stuff, and we just really wanted to connect with the characters. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of one of the biggest things. And when I imagine like a screenshot from like a really good movie, it's almost like you're having a conversation with the person. It's almost dead on straight. And I actually feel like Roger Deakins, who's like a very famous cinematographer, he's all about on-axis filmmaking. And he's like, I'm trying to get the camera as close to in line as possible, even if it's two people sitting at a table. So it's like the actor has to move over kind of a thing. But like, it's just a really good way of just kind of having a sort of intimacy in the shots, if that makes sense. And that's what I try to strive for.
Yeah, I love that perspective. Definitely spoken like a true cinematographer.
Yeah, I mean, Roger Deakins in particular, like he can't really pinpoint to a specific style. Like he kind of goes along with the filmmaker, where you bring a good point that, you know, there's certainly a through line in his work. There's a certain intimacy you feel with characters, and I guess that's the reason why.
Sorry, I just find that really interesting. So we made 12 films together. All of them are very different in color and tone and all sorts of stuff. And it's like, people are like, what's your style, Colin? Besides like the on-axis filmmaking. I don't really have a particular style. I guess it's whatever kind of goes towards the film,
whatever
it needs to be.
That can be a really good thing, though.
Yeah, and I feel like there's just this emotion, this feeling. It's in my heart, you know what I mean? And it's just like, I need to follow this path of like what this is. I'm not necessarily trying to instill myself into it per se, even though I'm sure that comes naturally. It's more just like, I want to make the film what it has to be.
Yes, it's good to be versatile and not to box yourself in. I mean, I love a lot of what is it called, auteur cinema, where it's like, you know exactly what you're getting from a person. That can be great too, but there's something to be said about, you know, something different every time, for sure.
I do also feel like when I approach to cinematography in general, if I'm looking at the monitor and I feel like this looks like a movie, it's the right shot. If I'm not getting that feeling, it's not what's right to me, at least.
I've had that before too. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, this is a movie, you know.
I will say, I also think another component of like your style per se, Colin, would be like, I think the two films out of the 12 we made that you liked, or that you liked visually creating the best, I think you told me were Shadows of Deceit by Owen Carson, so movie
that makes
9.
sense.
That's fair.
Film noir.
And movie 12, Boxing Day in Evergreen Springs. And in both cases, I think what you really liked about it was that you really like went for such a specific look and dialed it in.
That's very
so
fair.
I think it's less like you have a specific look you like, as it's like you like picking a specific look early on and dialing it in.
Yeah, I guess I pick themes. Yeah, I guess that's a big part, because like film noir, you know, it's very specific, harsh lighting, you know, it's like very just like laser beam down, Rembrandt lighting kind of a thing. Pools of light in the background, very like particular. It's like some sort of like Venetian blind effect or something like that really pops things out. It's the character in their environment. But then movie 12, it's very much Hallmark movie-esque. And so it's lots of soft light, like big rooms, lots of production design of like little bits and bobs that are like Christmassy and stuff like that. And
we threw a ton of filters on the lens.
Yeah, a ton of filters
on the lens. That's so fun to play around with different styles.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, this is the vibe that I'm going for. It's like, we're not making a Hallmark film, but we're making a Hallmarky film that Ben and Colin would make, if that makes sense. So it like has the vibe, you know what you're watching, you know, it has that inspiration in there. But I guess ultimately it is kind of our film, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's our take on the genre, if that makes sense. And that's nice.
So just in case the audience hasn't caught the vibe yet, Ben, I'd love to throw it over to you just to give a summary of 12 Tales and that whole project.
You just hear our espresso machine auto shut off. Okay,
well,
I guess we have a fifth host on the
espresso machine
podcast today. I need to invest in another microphone so we can catch that in all its glory. A summary of 12 Tales films, and maybe you can touch a little bit on each project over the course of that.
Oh boy, that's a lot to tackle. I think we need to tag team this.
Yeah, good thing you have a partner.
A few times. I mean, overall, I would say that the central theme we kind of landed on that like goes across all 12 is time marches on. I think really like the movies take place in a timeline from the earliest in the timeline is 1968, and the latest in the timeline is 2068. And they're not all presented in timeline order,
Right.
or even like really chronological order. But the idea, I think, that's present across all these films is time is eternally moving, so you should act now. Make decisions now. I think that's not something that's like intentionally a universal theme across all 12, but it came out, I think, because of the way we were making them. I think that's something we were both very much feeling while making the films, and so that presented itself in the stories that we decided to tell.
So I feel like this is an important note, and it's like the whole challenge was to make 12 films in 12 months. We didn't have a plan. We wrote the scripts in the month. It was mostly just necessary to like get these things done, do a good job, make the films that we want to make. But like there was no like grand story arc that we were going after. And like we did two timed challenges, a 72-hour film challenge and a 48-hour film challenge.
So in both cases we had even less time.
Less time, and like you have to write the scripts like in that time, and maybe we're like sharing ideas with other people, very collaborative, So what I find really interesting is that right now me and Ben are looking at these 12 films that we made as a package together as the audience. And I feel like there's the filmmaker and there's the audience. And I feel like there's two very different interpretations. I feel like artist interpretation goes out the window once you give it to an audience member, because everybody is going to come from a different walk of life. They're going to look at it differently. And that's kind of where me and Ben are at. It's like, okay, we have these films. What is the kind of shared universe here, the overall story arc? Because it was made by us, there's these inklings of a connective tissue, if that makes sense.
There's always like a certain lens that you're looking through something, even if it looks different.
Yeah, even just like subtle inside jokes and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, and it's just like really important to note that it's just like this was not the plan, but now because we're presenting it as a feature anthology, and then we're trying to get this like wrap around to kind of tie it all together as just like a nice thing to watch, if that makes sense. I don't know, Ben. What do you think?
It's just a bunch of stuff.
It's just a bunch of stuff.
Like you can wax poetical about theme all day, but ultimately, like, if we had been doing that while we were coming up with the ideas, we wouldn't have gotten anything made.
Exactly.
So, I think, theme is really important for interpretation of work, but at the same time, like trying to focus so much on that. I've seen it firsthand. Like I've been involved in productions where the director got so caught up in like the story and the characters and the theme that they didn't end up getting anything made.
Exactly.
For sure. I think Shadows of Deceit by Owen Carson is a really good example of this. That's why we had it as the opener to Coffee to Cocktails. Is kind of the thesis of your whole thing is at least we did it.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least I got the fucking thing done. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's so important as creatives. You can be like, oh, it's not good enough. But it's like you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. And like we've all seen it happen that just, you get started working on something. Everybody gets all excited. And it's like, okay, we're going to shoot soon. We just need to nail down the location and a lead actor. And we need the props. And it's just never going to get done.
So I feel
that's very funny. We should talk about the roller rink movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
The one that never got made.
Can I say this bit first?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like Shadows of Deceit is a very important film for me because it was the first film that I really felt like I 100% knew what I was doing. I know I knew I had a specific thing that I was going after. It's like noir. It's a very defined genre, But like doing this film, I really felt like I'm going to put this light here for this intention rather than just like we're making a film for a film challenge. It's that I'm making the cinematography for very intentional reasons, and it's like I threw a light up, maybe I had another light and I'm like, nope, that's not working. I kill it. You know what I mean? Versus the earlier films, we were just kind of making it to get it done. This was, I'm making a film. I'm doing this. I know what I want to do. Let's go for it. And I feel like that was a really good kind of evolution for me. Because you make 12 films in 12 months. It's like the first couple films, it's like, oh, are we even going to make it to the end? We just want to try to just attempt to get this project done. But like Shadows of Deceit is movie 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's just like at movie 9, it's like we're so close to the end, you know what I mean? But it's like we've had so much practice. We've gone through so much strife and effort to get to this point. It's just kind of like we're getting this movie done. And this is a good segue into what Ben's going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So part of the reason we made Shadows of Deceit, wow, I is that the best one? Because it feels like that's the one we want to talk about today.
Well, I think it best represents
your
creative challenge that you've posed to yourself over
that's
the year.
for sure. Yeah. But I think like when that month we were supposed to make it, and also in February. So like twice we were like, oh, I have an idea. I want to make a movie set at the roller rink. And in February, the roller rink was not open yet. Even though they were supposed to open in February. So we had to make something else. And in September, they never got back to us. So we couldn't make anything there. And so in both cases, it was like, well, we can't make this movie this month, but we still have to make a movie this month. And I think that was really good for creative progression because it forced us to not let setbacks like that stop us from still doing what we needed to do.
So we made it what it had to be instead of what we wanted to be, because it's like, oh, we want to make this roller rink film and be cool. It was not working. But if we stuck to that, we would have probably never finished 12 Tales in general. You know, there's a lot of other stuff going on. We were pretty burnt out at that point making 12 movies in 12 months.
Shadows of Deceit was our last chance to get off.
Yeah.
Is the other component too.
Sure.
Like I felt like we could have stopped at 8. It would have been like, well, we didn't complete the challenge, but we did 8 films. You know, that's something. If we'd stopped at any point after that, it would have been like, why didn't you do the last 3 or 4? Like, really?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's been a lot of people on YouTube who've done similar challenges because it's like, oh yeah, a film a month for a year. You know, it's like, I can do that. A lot of people stop off at 8 or 9. It's a very common thing. And I guess it's because you've gotten that far, but you're burnt out, but you're not quite there because there's still 4 movies to do.
For sure.
But yeah, once we got Shadows of Deceit done, it was like, there's no doubt we're going to finish this now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was good. We made really good movies. And the next one was
Sugar and Spice.
And Everything Nice. It was really good. So I feel like in the transition of making 12 films in 12 months, it's that at 2 of our kind of like transitional points as filmmakers, we were going into a time challenge. We had a lot of issues with movie 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
very hard shoot. Had to add days, lots of stuff like that.
Yeah, lots of stuff like that. Stuff happens, you know.
Yeah.
Right. But then the next one was a week later, and it was the 72-hour film challenge. And
we were burnt out from turning around a movie in like 24 hours.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But like we made a movie that was just way better than it should have been, you know, and it was, you know, a time challenge, and we ended up making this like really deep
it's
movie.
The longest one.
It's the longest one. It's 10 minutes long, you know, and it feels like it should be 10 minutes long. You know how like some films it's like, oh, it could be shorter. It's like, no, this is the right length, you know.
Pacing is important,
and like
in indie stuff.
That's really hard in a time challenge. How do you make like a long thing? We didn't plan for it. It just kind of came together, and it was just like adding scenes, doing this stuff, and it really kind of like helped us kind of like refresh ourselves of being like, hey, we made something cool.
And not only that, it was a dystopian sci-fi in 72 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's more like Black Mirror, where it's still kind of like current day things with like little bits of more advanced technology with like
it's only set like 40 years in the future.
But, with like a societal premise, you know, it's the future. Social media is taken over and books just aren't really a thing anymore, and then the main character finds a book. And then going forward, we did Shadows of Deceit. That was a really challenging film to get done. It was just like a really tough time. But then we went into the 48-hour challenge, which was pretty soon after as well.
Yeah. And we just kind of made something. But what's interesting on that one was that was the first time in my life of like making films by myself that I've ever like felt I could abandon a project and it would still get done.
Yeah.
Because like I got like, I don't know what happened to me physically that weekend, but I got so like tired and sick, and I just collapsed and went to bed in the basement.
You overdid it.
Yeah, because you guys are also working full time as filmmakers during the day, right? So that's a lot to put on your plate.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a whole nother thing. It's like having a full-time job, then doing 12 Tales, and each one within a month. How do you find time for that? And it's just like super duper tough. And then like the last film, the Christmas one, we had such a tight turnaround on that because it was just like, oh, the Christmas season is coming. It's kind of almost like a smaller month in a way, you know, because everyone's going to be gone.
Yeah, everything's shut down.
All these films debuted at Kino. Kino was happening sooner, and it was just like, oh, it was all this stuff. But yeah, the 48-hour challenge was interesting because all these films, you know, like, it was very collaborative, but like some of them I would definitely say like I co-directed, you know, that was a lot of stuff. But that one, the co-direction did happen because Ben got sick halfway through the shoot and he had to go lie down downstairs. I felt really bad. He was in a really poor state, you know.
Yeah, but somehow I had enough confidence that it would just get done anyway. Like any of my films
really great.
I had made prior to last year, I would have felt like if I do not keep moving, it will not get done. And on this one, I went to bed. And then I woke up and Colin had shot half the movie for me.
That's amazing.
But not just that. I shot shots that he wanted to shoot without communicating to me. And he's just like, hey, that's exactly what I wanted. That's super weird. Yeah. And it was just funny in the moment stuff. And it was just like the end of the movie, you know.
I'm also in the movie asleep in the background in one shot because
didn't want to wait
because we had to shoot in the basement for the one part. So anyways, Ben's asleep. We're still shooting the movie, you know, putting up lights, you know, shooting stuff. But Ben is very much in the background under blankets. You can't really tell, but it's just there's two beds and then one has a big lump in it, you know, and it's funny. Just like, Ben, you're in the movie. Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So comparing you two as filmmakers at the beginning of this challenge to yourself versus you two as filmmakers at the end, what are some of the differences that you see in yourselves, including, you know, you mentioned taking on more directing duties as you went on?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to almost like take a bit more of a like multifaceted approach in some ways. Like I think I came at it more technical and then I like unlocked more of the dormant creative side that had been like kind of waiting to come out. And I think in the back and forth we have with that is like, I'm really happy with like the cinematography or like how I directed the cinematography, I should say, in the first half of the films. And then in the second half of the films, I'm really, really happy with the performances. So now it's like kind of trying to pair those back together is kind of what I'm coming to. And I think another component is, you know, I'm just wanting to like take more risks and be a little bolder on the next projects. You know, I'm writing a feature right now and like I am ready to like try things that are a bit more weird and out there in terms of how do we shoot certain scenes and what kind of performances do we want out of our talent while still hopefully maintaining some appeal to a general audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, well, you know, as I mentioned before, I went to film school in a way of being like, I don't want to be a director, which is not the normal thing. And then I came out as like, oh, I'm going to be a DOP. So like I've done shorts before 12 Tales and all this other stuff, but going into 12 Tales, it's like, okay, this is my chance to be a cinematographer again, you know, post-COVID and all that stuff. But then as it went on, just because of the nature of things, I ended up co-directing a lot and directing scenes just out of necessity. And I kind of like it. And that's funny because I very much was in the stance of like, I don't enjoy directing it. Like I'll do it if it's necessary, but like, it's not my thing. I do think I'm decent at it, you know, but it's just like, it's not something I pull like enjoyment out of, if that makes sense. But now maybe that's different. And now I'm like, maybe I shoot some stuff. Maybe what was it, Robert Rodriguez? He shoots and directs kind of a thing.
Yeah, you learn a lot that way though.
Yeah. And so I think going forward, I'm gonna direct some stuff, and I think that'd be good. I have this zany idea for this pizza delivery film, which I'm gonna try to finish writing, and that's fun. So yeah, I don't know.
You should pick Kevin's brain about that because he also has an idea for a pizza delivery film.
There you go.
Oh boy.
See if you guys overlap on that. And that's really great when you find someone that you can co-direct with and rely on, because sometimes co-directing can be a bit of a two-headed snake that's like trying to bite itself. You know, and like clash.
No, I've definitely been in that kind of situation before.
Yeah. But with the Discovery, the Alien short that we shot recently with Kevin, that was an example where Kevin was going to direct it. And then once we were on set and he was behind the control console with the alien mask on,
he literally couldn't see, really.
And, like not really being able to see. It was almost like an unspoken thing between the two of us that was like, I'm gonna need to fill in some of the gaps here.
Yeah, exactly.
That Kevin is unable to, like visualize the performance and watch people. And he very graciously offered me retrospectively the co-directing credit. And I was like, I think co-directing with Kevin is pretty fun.
That's pretty much what happened on Shadows of Deceit
Yeah.
too, right? Like I was in the frame and there were just those moments of like, oh man, yeah, Colin, you make the call here because I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who can see what's going on, and it's just the two of us in a room. So
Yeah.
It's really nice to be able to trust someone on that level, and you can kind of have like the yin to each other's yang. Like it seems like you are maybe more idea driven sometimes, and he's a little more technical, so you can balance each other out in that way. Maybe
there's also another thing. I'm very much based in the present, which I think is important as a cinematographer, because it's like I have to shoot the image right now, you know, right?
But your mind's in the edit.
Yes.
And in the future.
Well, even then, when it's in the edit when we're on set. When we're in the edit, it's on showing the movie. I'm always like 3 steps ahead.
That can be good though, because then there's a creative vision for the film, and it's not just hapless. You're like, I see the final product. It can be really good.
But it's really good because you can get stuck both ways, like stuck in the present, stuck in the future. And I feel like we pull back and forth on that, and that actually helps us actually get more done, which is really good.
Absolutely.
No, it is good. And I think another component like that I'm kind of focusing on learning this year is, we've got really good at making films last year, but I think now I also want to really focus on getting really good at like selling and monetizing and financing films and kind of breaking more into the producing side. I think in a way, the way we executed 12 Tales kind of took that out of the equation, because I said, how are we going to get budgets for this? I'm going to pay for it with my money.
Yeah,
we also won some money. We also landed a couple sponsors, but none of that was like we set out to do it. It was just kind of stuff that came along with it. For the most part, it was financed with whatever money I had that month. And the other component was we didn't think about distribution like at all the entire year. Every single film was just, we're going to put it at Kino. We're going to put it at like maybe another festival if that conveniently like lands in our lap. But that was pretty much the extent of our process for putting the films out. So now I'm trying to think more about like, how do we market and sell this? We have our big screening coming up.
I'm super excited to see
really
these
fun.
rapper segments that you've been talking about, and see them all, put back to back together.
The progression of everything too.
Because coming up in April, right?
Yeah,
is your screening at the Mayfair of all these
very soon.
April 13th.
It's exciting when you're racking, right?
Yeah. So also thank you to Andrew for like just giving us some really solid advice on screening at the Mayfair when we had the Coffee to Cocktail screening, and
it's a process.
Yeah.
It is,
but definitely like there's a few things we picked up on that are really going to help us. But yeah. And for the screening, we're lucky enough to have connected with Soul One Productions, who's kind of helping us with landing sponsors and, providing some distribution support there.
Cool. That's awesome.
So yeah, shout out to Mike. You were on his podcast like a month and a half ago. I've been on his podcast too. But Soul One Productions, fantastic organization, doing a lot of really great work with youth arts in the city.
Yeah. So go ahead and buy your tickets for the 12 Tales Films screening that's coming up. I'm super excited. I'm going to try and drum up some other people to go along.
For sure.
Thank you.
I think it'll be a good time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now that's in the near future. You've hinted several times about the further future and finally sitting down and making the feature. Do you want to divulge some more about that? Because I know
let's talk about it.
One of the 12 Tales
they'll force
films,
you to do it if you talk about it, maybe.
One of the 12 Tales films that was in Digi 60 was, you said it was like a smaller short film version of what that will ultimately be.
Yeah, so it's funny because we've talked about like all the high genre pieces we've done this year, but for my feature, it's actually like a coming of age dramedy. So much more like down to earth and, much more, I guess,
accomplishable.
Like, yeah,
Sure,
well, because ultimately, like, you can
budgets.
do a dystopian sci-fi short very, like, you don't have to spend as much money to pull that off a dystopian sci-fi feature just to like have it visually be consistent. The budget will add up very quickly.
Especially in Ottawa.
Yeah, but I had this idea 5 years ago. Like basically I just finished film school and was kind of directionless in life. So I spent most of my second year of film school like trying to get a feature together. This has been like a long time kind of coming.
Definitely.
But I was trying to write this like fantasy epic that like just even if the school had fully gotten on board and like just given me all the gear for the whole summer and like all of my classmates had agreed to work for free, it just wouldn't have been executable. And like I ended up burning out and giving up, right? Right towards the end of the year. So that was kind of the tail end of my college experience. Was I went out of it with like, oh man, I'm just like, I'm not gonna be what I said I was gonna be. Like I don't even know what to do with myself. So I did what seemed like the most natural move at the time and just like applied for jobs. And the only job I heard back from was to work as a camp counselor at a camp for people with special needs, which I had no prior experience to prior to that. So I worked there for one summer, and I actually ended up off of that picking up a lot of work as an in-city worker, working in after-school programs for people with special needs. And I ended up finding like an additional passion of mine in that. And that ended up really helping me because that helped me in developing youth programming, which is now what I'm able to do and kind of combine that with filmmaking.
Definitely.
So all that being said, over that summer, I had this idea for a script strike me, which was kind of basically it boiled down to, we've seen a lot of movies about people with disabilities, but we've never seen it like really authentically told from the person with the disabilities perspective, but also we've never really seen it from the perspective or like from with the insight of actually having been a worker and spent extensive time with these people. So kind of I wanted to portray something really authentic. And the concept really centers around basically there's this young nonverbal man with autism who doesn't speak, but he sings. And my friend Clayton, who's going to be the lead actor in it and was the lead actor in the short, he is autistic. And so he kind of had a lot of really good input on how to tackle the script, to the point where I've now kind of upped him to co-writer on the feature as well.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So basically him and David, who's my usual co-writer and roommate, the three of us have been meeting like pretty much once, twice a week. In fact, we have a session tonight to just work on the feature and put the script together, and really like you were talking earlier about your kind of creative sessions, like hold people accountable to really work on what we're going to do.
It's nice because the weeks kind of slip by otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And like doing it as the short was also really good because I think it helped us kind of land on a visual style, and it helped Colin kind of get on board of like what the story is and how to tell that, because this was very much like, this was my very intimate personal world that I've now opened up to like bring other people into. So kind of finding that process has been interesting. But yeah, basically the goal is we want to tell a story with a nonverbal protagonist that's really informed by authentic storytelling about disability and authentic storytelling about working with people with disabilities.
I think that could lead to really interesting filmmaking, because I think some of the best filmmaking is show don't tell, and in this case you really can't.
One of my pitches is it's it's like a mumblecore movie except without the talking.
That's funny. Literal mumble.
So it's just like people existing in spaces and kind of showing how do we make that interesting? How do we make that compelling?
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's so lovely seeing the short film version of it and how much was told just
very sweet.
visually.
Yeah, that's about halfway through the story we got in the short. So like, as you can see, there's not a lot of plot in the feature. It's a lot more character moments.
Yeah. And you guys are collaborating on this, I assume.
Yeah.
Or is this about to get super, super awkward?
So we are. So the way that we kind of set it up, because
Colin's ultimately not a writer.
Yeah, I'm ultimately not a writer. I think as I kind of mentioned before, Ben's in the future, I'm in the present, right?
Yeah.
And I think for this to work, especially between like full-time jobs and a bunch of other stuff, is that right now, because writing a script, especially a feature script, it's very fluid and dynamic, and it changes, and it's also a lot of reading.
Hasn't even read the script yet. And will not read it until we shoot.
But I made the short. I made the short with him,
guess.
so like I'm very much like I understand like the general premise and like the look that we're going for and a bunch of other stuff. But I suppose what I'm trying to get at is that right now it's that the best thing I can do is not read it until we're closer to it actually happening, because it'll be more solidified and he'll be able to be like, this is the movie I'm making, versus like it's kind of up in the air, you know. But I definitely say if you're going to make a feature film, making a short film version is a really good practice way of like kind of getting into it.
We didn't do that with Coffee to Cocktail. So it was just
even if it's not like necessarily like, oh, this is the short of the feature.
Yeah.
Like just making something that has some similar elements in it so you can test out those elements can be really, really helpful.
That's definitely been on my mind lately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think for our next feature,
Fingers
that's
crossed.
with, something that we're hoping to do next is high concept. So we definitely need to practice that. I think with Coffee to Cocktails, there was definitely a lot of learning that maybe we could have figured out through like a shorter thing, but you just wanted to hit the ground running and just get it all done, and you felt like if you made a short you would maybe want to give up on the idea sooner. I don't know.
Maybe. I would say Coffee to Cocktails was more like everything that went on the screen I already kind of knew how to do. It was more of a learning experience of everything behind the scenes and like running more of a long-term set and being a good director. As far as like capturing on camera, it's like we do that every day. That wasn't as much of a
that's definitely
challenge.
Part of the reason why you didn't want to do short form. You're like, I've done enough.
Yeah.
That does kind of tie in with 12 Tales in a way, which is funny because we almost made that opposite decision. Like, I think part of why I said 12 shorts instead of a feature is 12 shorts you have like an opportunity, like as we said about film 8, but also like at about film 4 or 5, right? Where you can stop. Yeah. And you still have something finished.
So like in the short, there was some like technical shots that were very specific, like some up high kind of like camera angle shots. And we're like, okay, how do we achieve that on a budget? But it's really good that we did it, even though the shots were good. We're going to do it different. Better. We're going to do it differently next time.
Yes. We're not just going to like hang the camera off a C-stand and hope for the best.
Oh my goodness.
It was safe. It was all sandbagged, but it's just like, it just wasn't substantial enough for like the reliability, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not falling over, but just for the quality
the wobbly,
of shots.
Yeah.
Because it kind of bounced up and down a little bit.
We had to digitally stabilize like every single one of those shots in post. Yeah.
But, you learn.
Absolutely. I love the learning experience of filmmaking. Every day is a school day, as they say. And if you come onto set thinking that you know everything, I don't think it's going to go well. You always have to be open to the collaboration aspect.
Which ties into something I actually thought of earlier when we were talking about film schools, right? Is like, I think a lot of people who are maybe listening to this podcast, might be on the fence about like, do I go to film school? What film school do I go to? Do I maybe like study interactive media design or broadcasting or whatever else instead? Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter now.
You're all like, we all have different educations. We're all here.
Yeah.
I have seen people in the industry from every single conceivable background. So like, as long as you're like putting in the time to make things and you keep a learning mindset, pick any of those programs, you can be a successful filmmaker.
It's good to have a foundation. I think the best thing to come out of that is just the learning to learn, and then also the people that you meet, like I met Andrew and everything, and the connections you make is a huge part of it. So.
But that being said, I would say all the programs will help you get to the same place if you're really determined to get there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's just different pathways. Like for me, film school is really good for instilling like confidence and also just like hands-on time with like higher quality equipment, because I was used to shooting on like a Rebel T3i, right?
Yeah.
And then just being able to jump up to like a C100 or like the Sony camcorders and then eventually like a Red Epic. That was good for me because I'm a hands-on learner, but that might not be the same for other people. But some people, they just need to go into the world and just make movies, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, and I think what I really needed to learn in film school was a lot less. Like, I learned a lot about the technical stuff, but like that's all stuff I could have in theory learned on my own.
Sure.
I think the real value I gained out of it was I learned how to work with people.
That's
because I was very used to just making movies by myself, and I think there was a style and approach that I had to like come back from and learn from to get to where I am now.
Also, networking's a big thing.
Yes.
Because like in high school, maybe you're like that zany video guy who makes movies. You go to film school, everybody's roughly on the same page, right? And that's really a nice environment to go into.
No, for sure.
Yeah, creative, like-minded people. Yeah, for sure.
So, if our audience listeners want to see your work or even connect with you guys about possible opportunities, where can they find you both?
So I am Benny B. Bergeron on most Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So Benny and then B and Bergeron. I don't go by Benny, but it's got a good ring to it. And my middle name is William, but I say it's Billy, so that's how it's
Billiam.
Yeah. So that's that. I also benbergeron.ca is my website, and you can reach me at any of those places.
For myself, it's just Colin Ziraldo on most social media. Mainly just Facebook and Instagram. If you type my name into Google, I'm the only one who shows up.
That's a nice thing.
Colin Ziraldo. That's Ziraldo.
When you type my name into Google, a murderer shows up. So.
Great.
If you type his name, it's some sort of fitness guy.
Yeah.
Nice.
My worst enemy.
But yeah, I'm very easy to find. You just have to spell my last name correctly. So
Awesome.
But yeah, and then last thing, I guess, where you can see our work, April 13th at the Mayfair Theater.
Yes.
None of the
Come
12
out.
tales are like available anywhere right now, other than that. So
Oh, okay.
if you, that's your next chance to see them. After which we'll probably make them public on YouTube or something. I don't know.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So buy your ticket and be there. Ben, Colin, thank you so much for joining us
Yes.
today. I
Lovely
honestly
to chat.
can't wait to either have you on again or just have a nice extended chat off mic because you guys are super interesting and I love talking shop. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for
You
having
too.
us.
Yeah.
So
No, it's
fun.
always great getting to hang out with you guys and
Mhm.
just like comparing notes and processes. Yeah. No, awesome
Mhm.
stuff.
Awesome. All right. Catch you in the next one. See you later.
Bye.